A groundbreaking study has proven that patients with near-zero kidney function actually have a longer lifespan when following a very low-protein diet compared to undergoing dialysis. These patients have been able to live for many years with a carefully managed diet and 4 specific vitamins. So why are CKD patients still being placed on dialysis every day? Will the dialysis industry even allow me to talk about this? In the US, many doctors simply do not care about their patients. I will provide a list of things that helped improve my kidney function from 54 to 98. These are controversial topics, and today's video will be even more controversial. When will dialysis stop being considered the only solution for advanced stage CKD? This multi-center randomized study examines CKD patients with a GFR below 7. It found that they had better survival rates when following a low-protein diet compared to those undergoing dialysis. So, the patients who only followed the diet lived longer than those on dialysis, even when their kidney function was nearly zero. Stage 5 CKD patients are still being pushed into dialysis as if it were the only option on the table, even when their kidney function is more than twice that of the patients we're discussing. Let's talk about dialysis because today, I want to be completely transparent about it. I admit that there was a time when I strongly supported dialysis. After all, it saves lives, and I used to recommend it to nearly every patient with a GFR below 15. That recommendation wasn't just my personal opinion, it was what the clinical guidelines for CKD management told us. That means many doctors today are still operating under the same advice. Patients with a GFR below 15 are often advised to start dialysis, not because they actually need it at that moment, but because that's what the guidelines say. The result? Many patients begin dialysis years before they truly need it. This could happen to you or a loved one. There could be hundreds of thousands of CKD patients on dialysis right now who are receiving no real benefit from it. A large clinical trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine is talking about this. This is just one of many studies proving that the later you start dialysis, the better. And yet, patients are still being put on dialysis early every single day. How can you ensure that you don't end up on dialysis years before you actually need it? To answer that, we'll examine the study I mentioned earlier. In this study, they tested a diet called SVLPD, or a supplemented very low-protein diet, on patients with a GFR below 7. The results were truly astonishing, or, as Big Pharma would call it, a direct threat to our profits. It's important to make sure everyone understands why treating patients with a GFR of 7 through diet instead of dialysis is such a big deal. For those who don't know, a GFR above 60 is considered normal kidney function. A GFR below 15 is classified as end-stage renal disease, ESRD, where severe symptoms typically appear because your kidneys are no longer filtering properly. A GFR below 7 means your kidneys are barely functioning at all. This is why, typically, when a patient's GFR drops below 7, dialysis is considered essential for survival. In this study, 112 patients with GFR between 5 and 7 were randomly divided into 2 groups. One group started dialysis, the other group followed a very low-protein diet with specific supplements added. Researchers called this the supplemented very low-protein diet, SVLPD. With this approach, end-stage patients could not only avoid dialysis, sometimes for many years, but also live longer on average than those who started dialysis. Patients with a GFR as low as 5 to 7 were able to survive longer and, in some cases, even thrive on a specialized diet with supplementation, without the need for dialysis. It's like challenging a system that's ready to crush you with monthly dialysis bills. That's why today, I'll examine how this diet compares to a standard renal diet, like the one I typically prescribe. We'll look at 4 essential vitamins you need to make this approach work. Don't miss that part, because these 4 vitamins could make a huge difference in your journey. VLP versus SVLPD, an advanced renal diet in the world of kidney disease. It has long been recognized that following a plant-based, low-protein diet is the best strategy for maintaining or even improving kidney function. This diet, known as a low-protein diet, LPD, is safe at all stages of CKD. It operates on a simple principle: the less protein you consume, the longer your kidneys will last. Typically, patients can follow a low-protein diet with minimal supplementation, just a general renal multivitamin, while eating normal, everyday foods. Of course, they won't be consuming meat, fish, or cheese, but when prescribing a diet for a patient, the goal is always to include as many familiar foods as possible. However, this approach is only effective if some kidney function remains. What researchers did to help patients with GFR below 7 survive was far more extreme. We're talking about a very low-protein diet here. To achieve such a low-protein intake, avoiding meat, fish, and dairy products is not enough. Anything containing protein must be completely eliminated. Legumes are not included in a very low-protein diet because they are rich in protein. The same goes for seeds and nuts. I believe that with a very low-protein diet, only a small amount of nuts per day is allowed. Now, the biggest challenge in transitioning from a low-protein diet to a very low-protein diet is grains. In CKD, most of your daily calories should come from whole grains, rolled oats, barley, buckwheat, bulgur, amaranth, brown rice, and even whole wheat bread. These foods should be the primary sources of daily caloric intake. However, they are also where most of your protein intake comes from. It's like saying that oats are your best friend when your GFR is 20, but they're forbidden if you want to avoid dialysis with a GFR of 5 to 7. Now, I'm not mentioning oats randomly here. In fact, rolled oats are an excellent food for people with kidney disease. They are one of the healthiest foods with the lowest protein content you can find. Their protein content is similar to white bread, and only white rice and potatoes have even lower amounts. Now, the foods you see here are some of the lowest protein staple foods, making some of them ideal for a renal diet. However, if you must follow a very low-protein diet, most of these foods will be off limits. What can CKD patients on a VLPD eat? What can CKD patients on a very low-protein diet, VLPD, eat? First, there are AER foods. What are AER foods? These are foods like noodles, rice, and bread that contain no protein, meaning their protein content is close to 0, yes, even lower than regular noodles and rice. This is crucial. These foods are key to the survival of patients in this study because remember, the VLPD relies entirely on getting enough calories without consuming too much protein. That's why AER foods have been used in countries like Italy and Japan for decades. Brands like AEN Flavs or Low Profun actually produce special pasta, flour, and bread for kidney patients. While in Italy, you can find these products in most pharmacies and even in some supermarkets, in the US, Australia, and most European or Asian countries, you still have to buy them online. However, they are not impossible to find, and they can really help. In fact, staple foods are the foundation of the diet for people with kidney disease. There is no doubt that grains and other sources of carbohydrates should be the base of the diet. However, most whole grains are fine as long as you are following a low-protein diet and not a very low-protein diet. What other foods are compatible with a very low-protein diet? What other foods are compatible with a very low-protein diet? You may be wondering how someone could survive only on AER noodles, bread, and biscuits. In reality, they don't have to, because there are many other foods compatible with VLPD. Many vegetables have a low enough protein content to be eaten daily: cucumbers, radishes, lettuce, bell peppers, tomatoes, celery, and more. These foods are generally safe for anyone. Now, fruits are even better. Fruits usually have an even lower protein content than vegetables, and with the exception of avocados, coconuts, and, in some cases, high potassium fruits, these patients can eat any fruit they want. But of course, when the goal is to get enough daily calories without adding protein, oils become your best friend. Since the study was conducted in Italy, I believe these patients were practically drenched in olive oil. If your salad isn't about 50% extra virgin olive oil, you're doing it wrong. But more importantly, these patients didn't just rely on AER foods to survive. This is another interesting part of their diet. In this study, patients were allowed a cheat meal each week to help improve compliance. So let's talk a little about compliance, because this is a serious issue. No diet will help you if you don't stick to it, right? Naturally, the stricter the diet, the harder it is for people to comply. As we've seen, VLPD is a very strict diet. It has nothing to do with the diets most people follow for weight loss, and it's even much stricter than the standard renal diet prescribed for patients. If you're a patient, you may be wondering how these researchers managed to be so lenient with cheat meals. While I have never been a firm believer in cheat meals, this approach clearly worked for them. Their diet was making dialysis unnecessary, right? You won't find this explicitly stated in the study, but believe me, even the cheat meals were likely restricted to some extent. I don't believe these patients were eating at McDonald's every Tuesday and doing mukbangs every Friday. How did the researchers ensure that the participants weren't eating McDonald's every day? By closely monitoring certain lab values. As we can see, if a patient started consuming more protein than allowed, their blood urea nitrogen, BUN, and serum phosphate levels would spike. This happens because protein-containing foods are loaded with nitrogen and phosphorus, two of the worst toxins for your kidneys. This also means that we can track these two levels to see whether a patient is actually reducing their protein intake. Supplements needed to avoid dialysis. Now, it's time to examine the supplements these patients need to avoid dialysis. In this study, they used only two types of supplements. First, for specific B vitamins, all in very high doses. Vitamin B1, thiamine, can help reduce lactic acidosis and maintain energy metabolism. Vitamin B6 and B12 are used to combat anemia. Managing anemia is crucial for the survival of stage 5 patients, and these vitamins can help. Vitamin B12 is also a vitamin that cannot be obtained from plant-based foods, meaning every CKD patient should supplement it. Vitamin B9, folate, helps regulate homocysteine levels, especially when combined with B6 and B12. High homocysteine is an issue in CKD because it increases oxidative stress and inflammation, leading to faster kidney damage. We definitely want to avoid that, which might explain why these vitamins were prescribed in high doses. I do not recommend taking any vitamins in such high doses unless a deficiency is observed, not even B vitamins. And it's not just to prevent alarming patients when they start passing neon yellow urine. Don't worry if your pee starts looking like nuclear waste. it's just the massive B12 dose. However, I do recommend a kidney-friendly multivitamin. These are beneficial for CKD patients on a renal diet because they provide all the essential vitamins while avoiding those that may be harmful to CKD patients. What are keto analogues, and should you take them? The other supplement used in this study, which may be just as important as B vitamins, is a keto analog supplement. So, what are keto analogues, and should you take them? These are special amino acids recommended for patients following a low-protein diet. Since we can't just call them special amino acids for desperate kidneys, they got the fancy name keto analogues, right? Now, not everyone takes keto analogues, and for most patients, that's not a problem. In fact, most patients consume more protein than they should, and this supplement wouldn't help in that case. However, those following a very strict, low-protein diet would significantly benefit from keto analogues, just like in the study we're reviewing today. Adding these special amino acids to a very low-protein diet helps prevent malnutrition because it's not the protein in meat that harms the kidneys, it's the phosphorus and nitrogen that come with it. Keto analogues provide essential amino acids without phosphorus and with very little nitrogen. Several brands offer these amino acids, including Freus and Albutrix. These are prescription supplements, so if you think you need one, talk to your doctor and get a prescription, possibly for Ketostro from Fresenius, the most widely used keto analog in the world. You can also buy non-prescription keto analogues. In fact, Albutrix sells their product online, and it's available in most countries. However, not all patients need keto analogues, which is actually great because they can be quite expensive unless you are on a very low-protein diet or show signs of malnutrition, such as low serum albumin. If you're looking for effective kidney care, don't forget to apply the tips from this video today. If you found this information helpful, hit like, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Thank you for watching, and may you stay healthy with strong kidneys.